Gormagat Ceann Comhairle. I welcome this opportunity to speak on the ongoing violence that is taking place in the Middle East. In the past 11 days, we have seen untold suffering being inflicted predominantly on the people of the Gaza Strip. I think we need to recognise that violence that breaks out in the Middle East seems to follow a standard pattern. Sometimes rockets are fired by Hamas into Israel, and then inevitably we get a response from the Israeli military and government which is always disproportionate, excessive and indiscriminate. We see that by looking at the numbers of casualties in the region over the past 11 days. Today it appears that some 230 Palestinians have been killed in this violence. Of them, 65 are children. We note also that 10 Israelis have died. All of these lives should not have been lost. None of these people should have died. But the comparison between the number of Palestinians killed and the number of Israelis killed really indicates the indiscriminate and excessive level of violence being perpetrated on the Palestinians by the Israeli government. As I said, all of these deaths should not have occurred, and they could be avoided if there was recognition that what is required in the Middle East is a political resolution. We've seen in our own country the pointlessness of violence for the purpose of trying to achieve one's political gains. It simply doesn't work. But we've also seen in our own country the benefit of negotiation and political leadership in order to resolve political disputes that appear intractable. Unfortunately, when it comes to political resolution, a huge obligation rests upon the more powerful party. And in this instance, the more powerful party is Israel. Regrettably, we haven't seen brave political leadership in Israel since the days of Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres back in 1994. And we should recall that peace can be achieved in the Middle East because those two men, along with Yasser Arafat, won the Nobel Peace Prize for their work on the Oslo Accords back in 1994. I think what has happened in Israel and perhaps in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority as well is that hardliners have assumed too much power. We need to recognise that this violence is going to continue excessively until such time as there is a political resolution. I think it is extraordinary that there is such unanimity coming from this chamber, and as Deputy Berry said earlier on, this is a chamber which usually divides on very many political issues. But when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East and what has happened there over the past 11 days, this Legislative Assembly speaks with one voice. And it could only be that we speak with one voice because of the wholly disproportionate actions of the Israeli military and government in response to what they say is a threat coming from Hamas. People ask, what can Ireland do? We have a strong voice. We are on the Security Council. I think we need to use our voice to ensure that the United Nations, and more specifically the United States, responds more appropriately to the ongoing inappropriate use of violence by Israel. Until such time as that occurs, I don't believe that Israel is going to regard itself as being bound by rules which bind the rest of the world. We also need to recognise that we have a responsibility when it comes to the European Union. I listened very carefully to what my colleague Deputy Haughey said in respect of that. We should use that opportunity next week in terms of what the European Commission is doing to ensure that there is a unified response from the European Union to the ongoing actions in the Middle East. We also need to recognise that what is going on is in effect the plantation of settlements for the purpose of the annexation of Palestine. And I think one message we could send out is we could, as is in the programme of government, recognise the state of Palestine or indeed establish a permanent embassy in Ramallah. Thank you very much.